Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and this is Steve Talks Books. Thank you for coming by, watch my weekly update. It's where I talk about what I've been reading, what I'm going to read, what I won't get to, and everything else in between. If you'd like to connect with me, the best place is on our forum at pagechewing.com. We have our forums there, blogs, event calendar, all the stuff I talk about. You can join in there or just chat with us. I can also be found on Vero at that one MFer or on Twitter at Steve Talks Books. And Twitter is book focused, and Vero I post what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, random stuff like pictures of my dogs, things like that. So let's start off with what I've been reading. This week I did read Caliban's War. It took up most of my reading week. Is that one book? It's a thick book. It's a thick book, but it's an easy read, and there's lots to discuss about that, which I'll get to here in a minute. But Caliban's War, I didn't like it as much as Leviathan Wakes. Is a little cheesy. The characters weren't as intriguing to me in this one. It kind of had the same formula as the first book, and I wonder how much the TV series has influenced my enjoyment of this series. And I have been enjoying it. I did enjoy the first book quite a bit. Caliban's War, I enjoyed it, but there were some things that annoyed me with it that just didn't hit the mark for me. But I'm still all in on the series. We'll be continuing to read Abaddon's Gate next month. And we did have a spoiler-filled Caliban's War discussion on Saturday with Robin from Bookends and Biscuits, Chris Mohan, and our friend Layla. We had a really interesting talk, and once we started talking, there was more to this book than I kind of remembered. We talked about this a little bit during the discussion. Is that we'll read a book and then we'll move on. And sometimes it's good to just reflect and to have a discussion and to kind of think about it a little bit deeper. Because I think sometimes as readers, sometimes we finish a book and we won't move on. And we talked about this a little bit lately, but I think when you give it some time to marinate and some time to kind of, evolve in your head, there's things that you start to realize once you give it some space to breathe instead of just going on to the next thing. So this week I'll be reading Orchards by Catherine Silva. It is a short, I think it's like a novella or a short story. It's a short story, long short story. I think it's about 50 pages long. It's what the events after The Wild Dark. Now, those of you who haven't read The Wild Dark, I did recommend it in a top 10 horror recommendations I did recently. It's a really great read with lots of human drama, lots of relationships, about grief. There is some horror. It's a post-apocalyptic story. I'm trying not to say too much about it, but it is a really enjoyable read. And this story takes place to one of the characters after the events of The Wild Dark. So I'm really anxious to get to that. I want to find out what the fate of a certain character is or what happens after the events of The Wild Dark. I'm trying to be really vague without spoiling anything. So once I finish Orchards, I will be moving on to The Tower of Living and Dying by Anna Smith Spark. It's the second book in the Empires of Dust series. We're having a spoiler-filled discussion for the trilogy with Anna Smith Spark on September 10th. So I'm trying to get that done before then and give it some time to marinate before we have the discussion. So that's next up for this week. And then after that, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be starting after that. I think that may take me the week because the writing style is it's very dense, and it's just dripping with information. I think there's my especially after reading something like Caliban's War, which is a really easy read. When I got into Empires of Dust after I read Leviathan Wakes, had to slow way down. I think that's going to be the same thing this time with Caliban's War, going into the Tower of the Living and Dying. I'm going to have to slow down and just take my time. So that will probably take the whole week, and for some other reasons that I'll get to here in a minute. On the channel last week, I did have the Obsidian Awakening review. That's a great fantasy book that more people should be reading, with a really great presentation on the paperback. So on the paperback copy of the book, I really love the presentation, and it's not something I really look for. I didn't buy it because of that, but once I had it in my hands, it was like, wow, this is really neat. This is pretty cool. I don't know that I'd go out and buy a book that had it just for that. If I didn't enjoy the book, it just happened that way. But for those of you who enjoy that kind of thing, it is a really great, it has a really great presentation for the paperback copy. And you all know me, I love my physical media. So there's always that. For the Friday conversation, we did have Michael R. Fletcher, Clayton Snyder, and Slowly Read, or Mark, the booktuber and author. And we had a really funny, it was a great time. My cheeks hurt after that one. We got into some fun topics. We talked about writing, about covers, about dialogue. We talked about fighting cock whiskey. We talked about just a ton of different stuff. Check that out if you haven't already. And the link for the podcast is also down below if you'd rather download the podcast or listen on your favorite podcasting platform. And on Sunday, it hasn't happened yet because I'm recording this before it happens, but we are having page chewing with Beth Tabler on Sunday afternoon. So looking forward to that. Beth is one of those people who does just so many different things that you wonder how people have the time in the day to do all that they do. So someone that I'm anxious to pick her brain and to find out more about her and what she does. So hopefully that goes off without a hitch. Last week, also not on the channel, but on the podcast, we did record part 3 of The Darkness That Comes Before with Daniel and Katerina. We did have that discussion, and that is also on the podcast. This week on the channel, there won't be a part 4 of The Darkness That Comes Before spoiler discussion because some of us have some things going on this week. So we're skipping a week. We'll come back with part 4 in 2 weeks. And I think part 4 is lots happens in part 4. So it came at a good time to give us some time to kind of catch up on part 4. And we'll talk in 2 Fridays about that. I will be starting to upload the audio to YouTube for those parts. Probably each week I'll be having a new part on the channel. So those will be there for anyone to listen if you'd rather listen on YouTube for some reason. And also this week I'll have a review. It'll probably be a short review, but it'll be a review of one of the books I've read recently. Some of these books I read, and sometimes, I think about doing a review and I just don't feel like I have a whole lot to say about it, even though I may enjoy a book. It's just something I don't want to force myself to talk about it for 5+ minutes or whatever it is to make it worthwhile. So I may have a couple of short reviews this week just to kind of give a quick thoughts on a book that I don't know if it, and that's not a slight against the book. There's not a ton to talk about or not a ton that I can say without ruining something. So I think I may be doing more of those as we go, and we'll get to shorts here in a minute. But also this week on the channel, on the Friday conversation, we will have Joanna, Philip Chase, and of course, Mr. Steven Erickson. Excited for that. It won't be a strictly Malazan discussion. I want to pick his brain on just fantasy and writing, his viewpoints, his experience. So it won't be for those of you who are worried about it being like a spoiler-filled thing. We're going to stay away from spoilers. It won't be a strictly Malazan discussion. Of course, we're going to talk about it, but I also want to just get out of the Malazan sphere and talk about Steven Erickson as a writer, his experiences, his views on fantasy, on stories and things like that. So it'll be a mix of both. But I'm thrilled to have a couple of people who are really experienced with the series, and then I'll be kind of the newbie because I've only read the first 3 books. So I'll be I'll have that perspective and bring that to the conversation. And of course, I hope all of you decide to come by and leave a comment. It always helps when those of you who come by and support these live streams and interact with us. It just makes it so much more fun. This week I didn't upload a short story on the podcast. I tried. I just wasn't feeling it. I kept trying and I kept messing up, and I spent some time on it. And I think we can all relate to those days when it just isn't happening. You keep trying, and it just doesn't work. It's just something about whatever it is. It's just not your day, and that was my day. So I tried. It just wasn't happening, and instead of getting frustrated and not having fun, I decided I'm going to skip a week. So I don't know if anybody cares, but there won't be a short story on the podcast this week. I will hopefully come back next week with a short story. And a quick update on the group reads we have. If you'd like to join any of these, it's all the information's on our forum. But we do have the Prince of Nothing part by part podcast. We do plan a live stream at the end if Daniel and Katerina are up for that. We're not quite sure, but I think it's going to work out that way. We're also reading Empires of Dust, and we'll have that discussion with Anna Smith Spark here in September. You do have the date for Watchmen set for August 27th. And we also have V for Vendetta scheduled now on the same day as Empires of Dust, just in the morning. So that'll be September 10th for V for Vendetta. We'll be reading it with Zara from Books with Zara. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, like I said, if you'd like to join, it's all on our forum. This week, I'd like to shout out a newer booktuber, and that booktuber this week is Marissa Bailey. Marissa's a pretty new booktuber, about a few weeks maybe, and she reads lots of classics. I really enjoy the way she does her reviews because she goes off of kind of not just recapping the story, not just relaying what happens, but kind of the feelings she had walking away from the book or when she finishes a book, kind of the emotions, what it made you think kind of thing I can relate to that. When I first started out, there was some bigger booktubers who shouted me out and who mentioned me in their videos. That really made a big difference. So try to pay it forward and highlight some channels once in a while when I can, just to get some more eyeballs on it. And if it's for you, if you enjoy it, go check it out. A thumbs up, a comment, of course, a subscription helps, because sometimes when you feel like you're yelling into the void, it's not fun. I mean, I know it can be a lonely feeling when you feel like you're just screaming into the void and nobody cares. So go check out Marissa's channel. I'll leave the link down below. Go check it out and then support it if it's something that interests you. I thought it was really interesting to hear all of your answers last week about reviews. I think it's really interesting that the way everyone has a different expectation for what kind of reviews they enjoy. Some people want a full spoiler review. Some people want no spoilers at all. They like to go into books blind. Everyone has a different preference on reviews, and I think it's really interesting. Reviews, and it's been discussed recently. People on Booktube have been talking about it, is that reviews don't get a lot of views. And they, for me anyway, they take up some time to do. And I think it's curious that reviews don't do that well, considering it's you're discussing a book. And so it's something that's intriguing to me to see why book reviews don't do that well. But I also remember too, something that Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative told me very early on, is that reviews don't do well out of the gate, but they have legs. So for instance, updates like this one, or something that is focused on a short period of time, they may come out of the gate doing okay, but then they're going to peter out and no one's going to care. But reviews, people will keep watching them for months and maybe even years. There was a review I did for Gunmetal Gods that did okay when I recorded it back in January. And once Daniel Green talked about Gunmetal Gods, I think that video had like 200 views in a week. I mean, it did better in a week after someone like Daniel Green talked about it, just because people were looking for more information. They wanted to check it out. So in that sense, I think they can be good. For me, I try to focus on books that I'm really passionate about, that I feel like I can talk about, that I feel like I can relay information to people, someone who may be interested in it, or someone who doesn't know about it, who may say, I didn't know this book existed. This is what I enjoy. I'm going to go check it out. Or sometimes I may say something that you don't like that will make you want to read it. So it's that thing with reviews where a bad review can sometimes push you into a book. And that's my question for this week, is what in a review will someone say negative about a book that will make you want to go read it? What's going to be like an instant buy? What is something that people say, I hated this book because, and it's an instant buy for you. For me, it's usually like something that people say it like destroyed me, or it's too dark. Like, I'll pick that up. So that for me is what I look for, negative reviews. Sometimes negative reviews have more of an impact than positive reviews. Now, I sound like a hypocrite because I don't like to do negative reviews on YouTube. I'll do like a blog post, or I'll post something on Goodreads, but I don't like to draw a lot of attention to it if I didn't really enjoy it. If I'm on the fence, I may do ones. I've done some lukewarm reviews, but I don't like to do negative reviews for BookTube anyway. Just something that I have to get the energy up to do it, and I just don't feel like I should put that. I mean, I'll write a review, but I won't make a video about it. I like to talk about things that I really enjoy on this channel, and trying to kind of focus on that. And recently, I've been thinking about doing reviews in shorts format, like 60 seconds or less, and that's harder than it looks. For people who can do those short reviews, you have my respect, because it's not as easy as it looks to get your thoughts all out in 60 seconds and not sound like you're, like on 3 times speed. It's not easy to do. Chris Reviews does a great job with 60-second reviews. Angel from Voices from the Mausoleum does a fantastic job with movie reviews via shorts. And I read this week that shorts make up 53% of all YouTube views. Now that was a huge surprise to me. On one hand, I know they're trying to keep up with TikTok and the shorter form content. It's worrying to me on one hand, because I don't want YouTube to become the next TikTok. I like the long form content. Some of you may have noticed, but it's their short bite-sized videos, and I think there's pros and cons to them. So I thought that was really surprising. Do you all watch shorts? And if you do, what types of shorts do you enjoy watching? So this week, I forgot to mention this last week. We did finish Stranger Things, and I have to say, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that a couple of the episodes are really long. They're like movies. They're longer than some movies. I didn't think the length was necessary. Some of it was really drawn out and could have just been tightened up a lot. I think it was overall a good season. I think the middle of the season was really strong. It started out kind of questionable for me with the first episode. It picked up, and the end, I'm not really sure. I'm not too excited about the last season. I think this is the last season, and I kind of see where things are going. I'm not really sure it's something that I'm too crazy about, but I'll watch. But I'm kind of disappointed with the last episode or so. I have some thoughts about that whole series and about the season and about some of the characters and kind of where they're going with it. But we'll see. We'll see how the last season goes, or they decide to do more. So I did think there were some really cool ideas they were playing with. I thought, some of the way that they expanded the world, I thought that was all really neat. There's some great horror elements to the season. I like that it kind of stepped up. Kind of felt like as the kids are getting older, that the intensity got higher too, with like the horror aspect, the horror and the violence and the gore. I felt like as the kids are getting older, all that is ramping up too. So I thought that was interesting. Also this week, Better Call Saul is wrapping up, which is good and bad, because you want those kind of landmark series to go on forever. But I'm glad it's ending. It's time, even though I'll miss it. You don't want it to go on too long, and we're at its welcome. The last couple of episodes, though, I'm not too crazy about. I think they're making some decisions that they just didn't need to make. They're doing some things here at the end, and I can see why they're doing it, but it didn't need the things that they're doing at the end. I think I don't know. I love that. I've always loved about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul that it's very nuanced, and there's room in these different scenes to breathe. I think some of these scenes, especially when we're down to a couple episodes, to wrap everything up, it just seems like there's too much room to breathe in some of these scenes that could, again, just like tighten it up a little bit. But if they can nail the last episode, I think it's better than Breaking Bad. I'll say that. It's right there now. It's pretty close. So we'll see how they do the last episode. I think there's one more left. So, but what a great series. Just fantastic. Also this week I may be going out of town. We may be going to Las Vegas for a couple of days, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We have an illness in the family that may cause us to have to postpone. So if I do end up going out of town, it'll be for a few days this week. I'll have stuff scheduled, and I'll be sharing pictures probably on Vero. So if you're curious, why you would be, it's there to check out. If I do end up going out of town for a couple of days, it's only going to be 2 or 3 days. So how are you doing? Let me know down below how was last week. What do you have planned for this week? Anything special? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? I always love to hear from you and hear what you're up to, so I can add other books to my list, or other movies to my list, or other music to my list. It's always great to hear from you. It's the interactions that make this fun. So those of you who come by, thank you so much for coming by, spending a few minutes of your day with me. It's always great to hear from you if you are into that sort of thing. But in the meantime, hope you all have a great day. Thank you again for spending a few minutes of your day with me. I know time is precious. Everyone's busy. Really appreciate it. I hope to talk to you all soon, and have a great week.